Denethor's descent into madness is sometimes judged quite harshly by movie fans, for the movies make it seem like Faramir's apparent death was the main driving force behind his despair, and so he might come off as a weak ruler that played into Sauron's hands by giving up on Gondor. Now, I'm sure that his son's condition did play a part in his madness and despair, for there's no doubt that it was an awful situation for any parent to experience, especially since at this point, Denethor had practically lost all of his family. However, I still believe that there is actually a deeper and more profound reason behind his madness, which Tolkien hinted at in the books, but which was never shown in the movies. Hey guys, it's Carl here, and in today's episode, we'll be unraveling Denethor's descent into madness. So during the siege of Gondor, Faramir led a counterattack to try and reclaim Osgiliath, which had fallen to Sauron's forces. This attack would turn out to be a massacre for the Gondorian soldiers, and Faramir was left in a dire condition after he was poisoned by a Haradrim dart and the black breath of the Nazgul. He was at the brink of death, and the moment Denethor saw Faramir, a seed of grief was planted in his heart, for he was sure that he was going to lose both of his sons. Denethor was also consumed by guilt, for after all, he was the one that had ordered Faramir to lead this reckless counterattack, and he put his son in danger without even giving him his blessing. Now, I'm sure that all of this inner conflict played a part in his despair, though for a while he seemed to manage to cling on to his mental state without giving in to madness. All of this would change that very night, for instead of keeping watch over his son, Denethor chose to climb up into a secret room of the White Tower, and the men of Gondor claimed that they saw a pale light gleaming and flickering from its narrow window. After a short while, this light went out, and Denethor descended and he sat beside his son, though he now appeared to be a different man with a gaunt, grey face that seemed even more death-like than his son's. Now, from this light, it's quite clear that Denethor was using the Palantiri of Middle-Earth, and that Sauron must have tormented him through it to leave him in such a broken state. Many people believe that through the Palantiri, Sauron showed him the dire situation that Gondor was facing, the incoming corsairs, his powerful armies, and the inevitable fall of men, and that these visions, combined with his son's fragile condition, were too much for Denethor to bear, and they compromised his sanity. This would explain why Denethor stopped caring about Gondor's defense, though I still feel that there's a missing piece to this puzzle, for after all, Denethor had spent the last 30 years confronting Sauron through the Palantiri, and so far, he always managed to withstand Sauron's malice. And so I believe that Sauron must have told him something, or shown him some vision which was much more significant. It's very interesting that when Pippin tried to comfort Denethor, the steward snapped at him, and he cried out that Gandalf's hope had failed and that the enemy had found it, and that now Sauron's power would grow even stronger and everything would be left in ruin. For some reason, Denethor clearly thought that the ring was back in Sauron's possession, and that he would now use it to subjugate and conquer all of the free people that opposed him. Now, Denethor knew about Frodo's quest to destroy the One Ring, and he felt that this was a foolish plan, and that it would have been wiser to hide the One Ring in Minas Tirith, and only use it if their situation ever seemed beyond hope. All of this makes me wonder if there was a link between these two events, Frodo's journey into Mordor and Denethor's madness. And after looking at the timeline, I found an interesting coincidence, that on the 13th of March, the orcs of Cir Ungol managed to capture Frodo, and they imprisoned him within their fortress. And that very night, Denethor had climbed up his tower and spoke to Sauron. I believe that through the Palantiri, Sauron told him that his armies had captured the Hobbit, whom they believed was a spy of Gondor. And this information was much more effective at breaking down Denethor than Sauron could ever have imagined. For Denethor would believe that the ring-bearer was captured, and that the ring was once again in Sauron's hands. And so, in Denethor's mind, his worst fears had come to pass. This is why Denethor looks so much paler, weaker and older after descending from his tower, and why he stated that Gandalf's hope had failed and that Sauron had found it. It wasn't beyond Sauron to try and manipulate his enemies with information to drive them into despair, for we also see this once more when he sent out the mouth of Sauron to trick the host of the West into thinking that Frodo was captured and tortured by showing them his mithril vest. Now Denethor would spend the next 2 days waiting for the inevitable end besides his son, before he totally gave in to madness and despair, and he chose to commit suicide upon a pyre next to his son. Perhaps he wanted to escape a horrible end at the hand of Sauron's army, and by burning their bodies, nothing would be left of them but ashes, and so the orcs wouldn't be able to desecrate them. I feel that, considering all of this, Denethor deserves more sympathy as a character. His biggest mistake and weakness was his pride. The pride that drove him to seek out more knowledge to surpass Gandalf, leading to his eventual use of the Palantir and his confrontations with Sauron. The pride which eventually exposed him to Sauron's manipulation, which drove him past the brink of madness and despair. Before ending this video, I'd like to point out how lucky the Fellowship were. When Sauron communicated with Denethor through the Palantir, they could sometimes read each other's minds and learn their thoughts. And so technically, at this point in time, when Sauron was telling Denethor about the Hobbit spy, he might have been able to read Denethor's mind and realize how Denethor was worried that the ring bearer was captured. And if this had to happen, Sauron would learn about the secret quest of the Fellowship to destroy the One Ring. This would have obviously compromised Frodo's journey into Mordor, since I imagine that Sauron would have increased his defenses to make sure that the hobbits didn't reach Mount Doom. And so, in a way, the Fellowship were lucky that thanks to Denethor's mental fortitude, Sauron didn't manage to pierce his thoughts about the ring bearer, and so their quest was saved. It's an interesting thought that I had while working on the script, and I feel that we need to give Denethor some credit for his mental strength. Anyway guys, this wraps up today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it. How do you feel about Denethor's character? Did you already know this information, or was it new to you? And if so, did it change your mind about Denethor? Do you sympathize more with him as a character? Or do you believe that there is nothing that could ever justify his actions? As always, I'd like to give a quick shout out to all my patrons that choose to support this channel. Your help and support make this channel possible, and I really appreciate it. Particularly my Valar tier patrons, Michelangelo and T. Gorman, and also my Wizard tier patrons, James Tudgell, Andrew Bomer, Mike Feeney, Roland Mirvold, and Tamar Baines. If you like the work that we do on this channel and want to support us, check out our Patreon page in the video description, where you can unlock some really cool perks. You can also support us by checking out our store and by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and joining our Discord server. All of these links can be found in the video description. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to join our fellowship today. Until next time friends, when we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-Earth.